Littlefinger is one of the most intriguing characters in A Song of Ice and Fire. He's a man who's constantly 10 steps ahead of everyone else around him, thinking in terms of decades rather than moments. He's a brutal man that orchestrates the War of the Five Kings from behind the scenes. He directly and indirectly murders people. He plots to tear the old world down and rise in the new one a powerful leader. He schemes, betrays, kills, and lies. But the real question is why? Why is this man dedicating his life to the destruction of other people and an endless chase for chaos and power? And the answer is quite simple, actually. Love. A wise Uchiha once said, "When a man learns to love, he bears the risk of learning hatred as well." And that is exactly what happens to Littlefinger. Petyr Baelish comes from the smallest of small houses in Westeros, just a few rocky towns on the smallest of the Finger Lakes, which is why he eventually gets the name Littlefinger. But fortunately for Petyr, his father becomes great friends with Huster Tully, and thus Petyr was sent to be fostered at Riverrun. And unfortunately, his fostering at Riverrun was the beginning of the end for Littlefinger's security as a person, with one of the first notable things happening at Riverrun being Edmure Tully giving Petyr the insulting nickname Littlefinger. A nickname made to insult and constantly remind Littlefinger that he doesn't belong, that he isn't one of them, and that he's beneath them. And this begins the long journey of Littlefinger being the butt of the jokes and falling victim to the cruelty of the Tully children. An example of this is when Lysa and Kat make mud pies that Petyr eats, which causes him to fall severely ill for a week. But where the bulk of Petyr's bitterness and insecurities come from are his failed relationship attempts with Catelyn. As a young man, Petyr found himself being toyed with emotionally by Catelyn and Lysa, and while they may have started off having good intentions, they destroyed this young boy's sense of self. For example, both Catelyn and Lysa played at kissing with Petyr when he was a young man, with Kat kissing him but then saying that she never liked him like that and saw him more as a brother. But Lysa, who did in fact like Petyr, not only kissed him but egged him on further. Point is, Littlefinger found himself in an interesting love triangle with the two sisters. But Kat isn't innocent in the situation. It seems like more often than not, she enjoyed the attention and took the chance to toy with Petyr, both intentionally and unintentionally. This emotional conflict inside of Petyr was only worsened after Catelyn openly rejects him in front of an entire crowd of people at Riverrun, pushing him away when he tried to kiss her after she had already danced with him 6 times. This caused Littlefinger great shame since the entire room was staring and laughing at him, which caused him to drink in order to mask his sorrow. Lysa, noticing this, sneaks into a blackout-drunk Petyr's room and sexually assaults him. I know this because Petyr thought he was having sex with Catelyn, and having intercourse with someone who's intoxicated that doesn't know who you are and doesn't consent is sexual assault. The night then ends with Littlefinger calling Lysa Cat and saying that he loved her. But before I move on, it's important to take note of Littlefinger's character thus far. This is a young man who comes from relatively low birth that is reminded every day that he is less than. He is mocked, laughed at, toyed with emotionally, physically, and sexually. And it's important to note that this was all occurring during the ages of 7 to 15, which are some of the most significant years in a young man's developmental life. And this unfortunate reality for Littlefinger is only amplified by his defeat at the hands of Brandon Stark. When the date of Catelyn's wedding was announced, Peter, being 15 years old, challenged the 20-year-old Brandon Stark to a duel for Catelyn's hand. Peter arrived with only a helm, breastplate, and mail, leading to Brandon taking off most of his own armor. Peter asked Catelyn for her favorite to wear, but she refused, giving it to Brandon instead. After the fight started, Catelyn begged Brandon not to kill Peter, to which he agreed. And while Brandon offered Peter multiple chances to yield, Peter refused to give up. And unfortunately, in the end, Peter was left staggering, bleeding from a dozen wounds, and unfortunately, the battle ends with a backhand cut so brutal that Catelyn was convinced that Brandon killed Peter. Peter, on death's door, had a fortnight to recover at Riverrun, during which time Lysa helped care for him. But Catelyn did not go to see him, and Peter refused to see Edmure, who served as Brandon's squire during the duel. During this time, Peter slept with Lysa again. He would later claim to have taken the maidenhood of both Tully sisters due to his belief that his first encounter with Lysa had actually been with Catelyn. And then, to make his shame even worse, Peter sent Catelyn a letter after the death of Brandon. However, she burned it, never reading it. And this unfortunate string of events led to the Littlefinger that we know in the main series. Because much like his favorite child love interest, Sansa, Littlefinger believed in fairy tales. And unfortunately, he had to come to terms with a tough reality that they aren't real. When Littlefinger gets to Riverrun as a child, he is filled with hope that he can rise to power and be something bigger than himself. That if he stays true to who he is, believes in himself, and does the right thing, he will be rewarded with power, glory, and the princess of his dreams. He, like Sansa, believed that he could be just like the fairy tales he grew up hearing. But unfortunately, reality kicked him in the teeth and then stabbed him while he was down. Slowly but surely, every dream Littlefinger had was twisted, corrupted, and destroyed. His concept of being something bigger than himself is crushed the second Edmure gives him the nickname Littlefinger. A constant reminder that he will never be anything more than what he is. His concept of getting the girl through love is twisted and crushed the second Catelyn toyed with his emotions and made a fool out of him in front of the entire court. Granted, Littlefinger does have agency in this moment, but there is definitely a power dynamic at play between the two of them and their relationship, and that must be recognized and understood. And then, his concept of the little guy defying the odds and beating a bully for the sake of his true love is killed and destroyed when Peter himself is nearly killed by Brandon Stark. So much like Sansa Stark, Littlefinger's hopes and dreams get crushed by the brutal reality that is the world of A Song of Ice and Fire. And it breaks him. Littlefinger becomes emotionally stunted, constantly stuck in the few moments of joy he had at Riverrun, building an ideal fantasy in his mind where he got everything he wanted: the power, the girl, and the respect. Which is why throughout the main series, his bitterness and desire to obtain the love and respect that he dreamed of as a child fuels his hatred and spite for the people who took it from him to begin with, while simultaneously he is building his ideal fantasy in the background. That is why he is so infatuated with Sansa. She is his second chance at getting Catelyn, at getting the girl, and at becoming a powerful lord. That is why he creepily gives her lines in A Storm of Swords, such as, "In another life, maybe you could have been my daughter instead of Ned." The irony of it all is, while Sansa is his best shot at getting everything he always wanted, she will ultimately be his undoing. Littlefinger's backstory is one of tragedy, which in my eyes makes him a tragic villain and a tragic character. But with that being said, do not take this video as a defense of Littlefinger into the main series. While I do think it's important to empathize with his tragic beginnings, it's also important to recognize that the way in which he responds to the tragedy is toxic and evil. In another world, Littlefinger took his trauma and made himself better for it, learning how to help people just like him and being an overall net positive for the realm. But instead, he let the love that he once had become hate and consume everything that he originally dreamed of becoming. Just want to say thank you so much for watching, and please let me know in the comment section down below what you thought of this video. With that being said, check out my Discord server as well. It is growing, and I'm always looking for new video ideas there, and if you just want to talk to people in the community or me, feel free to join, and I will respond to your messages as soon as I can. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an amazing day. Peace.